Don't walk away. Please, sir, don't walk away like everyone else. The voice cracked on the last word, and Jackson Garrett, 6'3", 240 pounds of scarred leather and military discipline, froze with his coffee cup halfway to his lips. The child, standing 5 feet from his table, was shaking so hard the notebook in his hands rattled. "I swear it's real," the boy whispered. "They killed Mr. Birdie. They're killing the veterans. Nobody believes me, but I swear to God, it's real." 3 weeks of being called a liar. 4 adults who dismissed him. One last desperate hope standing in a diner full of bikers who society taught him to fear. Hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from, because this story about a child who refused to stay silent and the warriors who remembered their oath never expires is going to show you that truth matters more than reputation. And sometimes the people society fears most are exactly who we need. Watch until the end, because what this boy uncovered will prove that monsters hide behind respectable faces and heroes wear patches that make parents pull their children closer. Smoke, that's what they called him, had for 18 years since Iraq, since the burning Humvee and the smoke that filled his lungs as he pulled 3 men out. Smoke put his coffee down slowly, deliberately, the same way he'd moved through Fallujah when every instinct screamed danger and every calculation said assess before acting. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus Webb." The boy swallowed hard. "I'm 7. I know what everyone says about me. I know they think I'm making it up, but I'm not. I swear on my dad's grave I'm not." Diesel, sitting to Smoke's left, former combat medic, shifted in his seat. "Kid, what are you talking about?" Marcus' hands tightened on the notebook. "Mr. Birdie, Thomas Morrison, the homeless man who got hit by the truck on Highway 14 3 weeks ago. The police said he was drunk and stumbled into traffic, but that's not what happened. I saw it. I was there." Smoke exchanged glances with Hammer sitting across the booth. Hammer's expression said what Smoke was thinking. Another traumatized kid processing something he didn't understand, creating narratives that made sense to a child's mind. But then Marcus opened his notebook. The pages were filled with careful 7-year-old handwriting, dates, times, detailed descriptions written in the labored script of a child who'd worked hard to spell words correctly to document everything exactly as he'd seen it. October 3rd, 9:47 p.m. Marcus read, voice studying as he focused on his own words. "Mr. Birdie was crossing Highway 14 at the railway underpass. The truck was coming from the north, but before the truck hit him, a black SUV came from behind. It swerved. It hit Mr. Birdie from behind and pushed him into the truck's path. Then it drove away. Nobody stopped. The truck driver stopped, but the SUV never did." Smoke leaned forward. "Marcus, how do you know what time it was?" "I checked my watch. Dad gave it to me before he died. I always check it." Marcus touched a digital watch on his wrist, worn and scratched. "I was walking home from Grandma's house. She lives on Porter Street. I cut through the railway district because it's faster. I shouldn't have been there that late, but Grandma needed her medicine and Mom was working night shift at the hospital." "You told the police this?" Hammer asked. Marcus's face crumpled slightly. "I tried. Mom took me to the station the next day. Officer Ricks talked to me. He said I was very brave for trying to help, but that Mr. Birdie was drunk, and it was dark, and I probably just saw the truck and got confused about the SUV. He said witnesses make mistakes all the time, especially children." Saint, the oldest of the group at 65, former army chaplain, spoke quietly. "Did you tell anyone else?" "I told my teacher, Mr. Patterson," he said. "Children often misremember scary events, that our brains try to make sense of trauma by creating details that aren't real," he said. "I should talk to the school counselor." Marcus flipped to another page. "I wrote down what he said word for word, so I wouldn't forget." Reaper, former Detroit PD detective, studied the notebook. "You documented the dismissals, too?" "Yes, sir, because I knew people wouldn't believe me. So, I wrote everything down. What I saw, what I told people, what they said back. I thought if I had it all written down, eventually someone would listen. Smoke's jaw tightened. The discipline required for a 7-year-old to systematically document his own trauma, to anticipate disbelief and prepare evidence. That wasn't the behavior of a child creating fantasies. Marcus, Smoke said carefully. Why are you telling us this? Why now? The boy's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't let them fall, because it happened again. Leonard Cruz 2 days ago. They found him dead near the same underpass. The news said it was exposure and alcohol, but I know it's connected. I know it is. Diesel cursed under his breath. Jesus Christ, kid. I saw the news report. Marcus flipped to a new page where he taped a printed article from the Riverside Springs Tribune. Mr. Leonard Cruz, 58, Gulf War veteran, found deceased near Railway District underpass. Preliminary investigation suggests death by exposure complicated by alcohol consumption. No foul play suspected. That doesn't mean murder, Hammer said, but his voice lacked conviction. Mr. Birdie was a veteran, too, Marcus said. Vietnam. He had PTSD. He told me stories sometimes when I walked by his camp about helicopters and jungles and friends who didn't come home. Mr. Leonard had a brain injury from the war. He got confused sometimes, but he was nice. He always waved at me. Smoke felt something cold settle in his chest. You knew both men? Yes, sir. They lived under the Highway 14 overpass. There's a whole camp there, maybe 10 or 12 people, all homeless, some are veterans. I walk past them on my way to Grandma's house twice a week, and you're saying both these men died within 3 weeks of each other. Same location. Both ruled accidental or natural causes. Hammer's legal training was kicking in. That's suspicious, but it's not proof of murder. Marcus looked at him with eyes too old for 7 years. The SUV was the same both times. The table went silent. What? Smoke's voice dropped to the command tone that had moved Marines through firefights. I saw it again 2 nights ago. Same black SUV with tinted windows. I was walking home from Grandma's again. She had a doctor's appointment, and I stayed late, and I saw it parked near the encampment. I hid behind a dumpster because I remembered it from Mr. Birdie. I was scared. Marcus's voice shook. I watched it for maybe 5 minutes. Then it drove away. The next morning, Mr. Leonard was dead. Pixel, the youngest at 31, computer forensics expert, leaned in. Did you see the license plate? Partial. I wrote it down. Marcus showed them. 7B something Q something 2. I couldn't see the middle numbers because of the angle. Oregon plates, dark blue. The SUV was black. Maybe a Cadillac Escalade. That's what my uncle drives, and it looked the same. Wrench. The club mechanic nodded slowly. That's a $90,000 vehicle. Not something you see in the railway district often. Marcus Smoke said. Did you tell anyone about seeing the SUV the second time? The boy's face closed off. I had tried to tell Mom, she said. I was obsessing over Mr. Birdie's accident, and I needed to let it go. She said I was having nightmares and mixing up dreams with reality. She made me an appointment with Dr. Walsh for next week. Who's Dr. Walsh? Child psychologist. Mom thinks I need therapy because I saw someone die and I can't process it correctly. Marcus's voice went flat. Adult. She thinks I'm traumatized and creating patterns that don't exist. Are you? Sant asked gently. Traumatized? Yes, sir. I saw a man die. I watched someone kill him and nobody believes me. But that doesn't mean I'm making it up. Those are different things. The logic was sound. The pain was real. And Smoke, who'd spent 23 years in the Marine Corps learning to read people, to assess threats, to separate lies from truth under pressure, believed him. Clear's throat. Show me the rest of your notebook, Smoke said. Marcus handed it over. 23 pages of meticulous documentation. Page 1 to 3. Description of October 3rd incident. Timeline, weather conditions, lighting, witness position. Page 4 to 6. SUV description, movement pattern, approximate speed, direction of travel after incident. Page 7 to 9. Truck driver's actions, police response, ambulance arrival times, body removal. Page 10 to 12. Interviews with other people in the area. including to other homeless individuals who'd seen the aftermath, but not the impact. Page 13 to 15. His attempts to report it. Verbatim conversations with his mother, teacher, police. Page 16 to 18. Map of the area drawn with surprising accuracy, marking his position. Birdie's position, vehicle trajectories. Page 19 to 21. Leonard Crew's death. News report. His observations from October 25th. Page 22 to 23. Pattern analysis written in 7-year-old language, but showing genuine critical thinking. Both veterans, both same place, both police say accident, both 3 weeks apart. What if there's more? Hammer took the notebook, read it carefully. Former Army SID investigator. 6 years practicing law before the club became his life. He looked at Smoke with an expression that said, "This is either the most elaborate child fantasy I've ever seen, or we're looking at serial murder." Marcus Hammer said slowly, "If what you're saying is true, and I'm not saying it isn't, but if it's true, why would someone kill homeless veterans? I don't know, sir. That's why I need help. I'm 7. I can't investigate this. I can't make police listen. I can't do anything except write it down and keep trying to tell people." His voice cracked again. "Please don't walk away like everyone else. Please." Smoke looked at his brothers. Diesel gave a slight nod. Hammer's expression said, "We need to verify, but I'm listening." Sun's face showed the same look he'd had 19 years ago when Smoke first met him at the VA. The look that said, "Someone's in pain, and I'm called to help." Reaper spoke up. "Kid's documentation is better than half the witness statements I saw in 20 years on the force. Either he's the most calculating 7-year-old in Oregon, or he's telling the truth." "I'm telling the truth," Marcus whispered. Smoke made the decision. Clears throat. "Okay, Marcus, I believe you." The boy's entire body sagged with relief, actual physical relief, like he'd been holding up the world, and someone had finally helped carry it. "You do, I do. But believing you and proving it are different things. We're going to need to investigate. We're going to need evidence that holds up. And we're going to need to keep you safe while we do it." Smoke pulled out his phone. "What's your mother's number? I need to call her." "She won't believe you either." "She will, because I'm not going to tell her I believe her 7-year-old's murder theory. I'm going to tell her that her son witnessed a traumatic death, came to us for help, and we're veterans who work with at-risk youth, and we'd like to coordinate with his therapist to make sure he's getting proper support." Marcus stared at him. "You're going to lie?" "I'm going to give your mother a version of truth she can accept while we figure out the whole truth. That's called tactics, son. Sometimes you can't charge straight at the objective. Sometimes you have to flank." Smoke's voice softened. "But I'm not lying about believing you. That's real. You have my word. Your word means something." Marcus asked quietly. "My word means everything. I'm a Marine. We don't break promises to people we've sworn to protect. And you just became one of those people." Diane Webb arrived at the diner 23 minutes later. Smoke watched a woman who'd clearly just come off a 12-hour night shift at the hospital. Exhausted, worried, trying to hold herself together for her son. She saw Marcus sitting with 8 bikers wearing Hell's Angels patches, and her face went white. "Marcus Hayes Webb, what are you doing?" "Mom, they believe me." "Excuse me, ma'am." Smoke stood, extended his hand. "Professional, calm. My name is Jackson Garrett. I'm president of the Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club. We're a veterans organization. Your son approached us this morning with some concerns about a death he witnessed. We'd like to help." Diane ignored his hand. "Marcus, we're leaving now." Mrs. Webb Diesel spoke up. "My name's Robert Jensen. I'm a Clears Throat combat medic, former Army, also a paramedic with Riverside Fire Department. Your son is exhibiting signs of trauma processing that need professional attention. We're not trying to interfere. We're trying to help by encouraging his delusions." Diane's voice rose. "He saw a terrible accident. He's processing it poorly. He's creating elaborate theories because he can't accept that sometimes bad things just happen. He doesn't need bikers telling him his fantasies are real. He needs therapy. He's getting therapy." Smoke said calmly. "Dr. Walsh, right. We're not suggesting otherwise, But ma'am, with respect, your son's documentation skills are extraordinary. He's not creating random stories. He's observed patterns and reported them systematically. That deserves investigation, not dismissal. He's 7 years old. Yes, ma'am. Which makes his credibility difficult for adults to accept. But it doesn't make him wrong. Smoke gestured to the notebook on the table. Have you read this? All of it. I've seen his drawings and his notes. They're elaborate. That's what traumatized children do. They create detailed narratives to process overwhelming experiences. Hammer stood. Mrs. Webb. I'm Marcus Hammond, former attorney. I've reviewed your son's documentation. If he's creating fantasy, it's the most legally coherent fantasy I've encountered. If he's telling truth, he's witnessed at least 1 homicide and possibly 2. The police investigated an accident. They didn't investigate murder because they had no reason to suspect it. But if your son's observations are accurate, they should reopen the case. Hammer's voice was gentle but firm. All we're asking is that you let us verify his claims. If he's wrong, we'll help him understand why and support his therapy. If he's right, someone's killing homeless veterans 3 blocks from my mother's house, and my son is a witness. Diane's voice broke. If he's right, my child is in danger. Yes, ma'am, Smoke said. Which is why we want to help. We're veterans. The men who died were our brothers. If someone's targeting them, we take that personally. And if your son is the only witness who saw through it, we protect him. That's not negotiable. Diane looked at Marcus. Really, looked at him. Clear's throat, saw the hope in his face. The desperate need to be believed. Baby, she whispered. Are you absolutely sure about all of it? I swear it's real, Mom. I swear on Dad's memory it's real. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, Clear's throat tears were falling. Okay. Someone prove my son right, or prove him wrong. But give him an answer, please. Smoke extended his hand again. This time, she took it. We'll start immediately, Smoke said. Reaper, pull everything you can on both deaths. Public records, coroner reports, police filings, Pixel, traffic cameras in the area for both dates. Diesel, I want medical analysis of reported causes of death. Wrench, start tracking black Escalades in Riverside County with partial plate matches. Saint, I need you to visit the encampment. Talk to the other residents. Find out if anyone else saw anything. What about me? Marcus asked. You go home with your mother. You go to school. You act normal. You don't tell anyone else about this. Not friends, not teachers, nobody. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Good. Because if someone is killing people, the last thing we want is them knowing a 7-year-old witness is being taken seriously. Smoke knelt down to Marcus' eye level. You did good coming to us. You did exactly right. Now you let us handle it. Deal. But you'll tell me what you find. Age appropriate version. Yes. Full details. No, you're 7. Some things you don't need carrying around in your head. Marcus considered this. Okay. But you won't lie to me. I won't lie to you. You have my word. Marine's honor. The boy studied Smoke's face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. I believe you. Good. Now, go home. Eat something. Do your homework. Be a kid. We've got this. As Diane and Marcus left the diner, Hammer said quietly, we just promised to investigate a double homicide based on a 7-year-old's testimony. You know how this looks. I know how it looks. I also know that kid's documentation is too detailed to be fantasy, and his observations are too specific to be coincidence. Smoke looked at his brothers. 2 dead veterans in 3 weeks. Same location. Both ruled accidental. Anyone clears throat else smells something wrong. Reeks, Reaper said. I'll pull the files. I'll check traffic cams. Pixel added. If there was an SUV in that area on both nights, cameras caught it. Diesel nodded. Coroner reports will show if the injuries match or if there's a pattern. Sunt stood. I'll visit the camp today. People talk to priests, even former ones. What if the kid's wrong? Wrench asked. What if it really is just coincidence and trauma? Then we document that thoroughly and help him accept it with professional support, Smoke said. But what if he's right? What if someone is systematically killing homeless veterans and everyone's dismissing it as accidents because the victims are invisible to society? What if a 7-year-old is the only person who saw through it? Then we find whoever is doing it, Hammer said, and we make sure they face justice. Legal justice, Smoke emphasized. We investigate, document, turn over to authorities. We do this right by the book, because that kid deserves adults who take him seriously enough to do it properly. The brothers nodded agreement. No debate, no hesitation. One more thing, Smoke added. If we're investigating, we need to know what we're protecting against. If these deaths are deliberate, there's a reason. Homeless camps don't just attract random serial killers. There's a motive. We need to find it. I'll check property records, Hammer said. See who owns the land where the camp is. If there's development pressure, financial incentives for clearing the area. Good. We meet back here tomorrow morning. 600. Share findings. Smoke looked at each of them. We voted to protect that kid. We voted to honor our brothers if they were murdered. Now we follow through like Marines. Like we were taught. Sifi, Diesel said quietly. Sifi, they answered. As the bikers dispersed to their assignments, Smoke sat alone in the booth, looking at Marcus' notebook. 23 pages of a child's desperate attempt to be heard. He thought about his own son. Ethan, Clear's throat, 22 years old, Marine Corporal, dead by his own hand 3 years ago. PTSD. The VA had failed him. The system had failed him. He tried to tell people he was drowning, and everyone said he just needed to adjust, to be strong, to power through. Nobody listened until it was too late. Smoke wasn't going to let that happen to another child. Not on his watch. I believe you, Marcus, he said to the empty diner. And I'm going to prove you right. Outside, 8 motorcycles roared to life. The investigation had begun, and 300 miles away, in an expensive office overlooking downtown Portland, a man named David Thornton received a phone call that made him very, very nervous. Sir, his assistant said, there's been activity around the Riverside Springs property. Someone's asking questions about the recent deaths. Who? Local motorcycle club, veterans organization, Iron Brotherhood MC. Thornton's hand tightened on his phone. Handle it, sir. There, I said, handle it. Those camps need to be cleared by December 1st. I don't care about some bikers playing detective. The timeline doesn't change. He hung up and looked out his window at the city below. Riverside Development Corporation had 47 million reasons to make sure nobody looked too closely at a few dead homeless veterans. And if a child and some bikers thought they could stop progress, they were about to learn how wrong they were. Reaper found the first inconsistency at 11:30 that night. He'd been sitting in his home office for 6 hours, surrounded by printouts of police reports, coroner documents, and city records, pulled through channels that were barely legal, but completely necessary. Former Detroit PD knew how to work the system, knew which databases to access, which clerks to call, which favors to cash in. His phone rang. Smoke answered on the first ring. Talk to me. Thomas Morrison's coroner report lists blunt force trauma consistent with vehicular impact. Blood alcohol content. 17 time of death, approximately 9:50 p.m. Reaper said. But here's what's wrong. The impact pattern shows 2 separate strikes. Primary impact to the lower back and secondary impact to the chest and head. Coroner attributed both to the truck. But the angles don't match. The lower back injury shows lateral force, like something hit him from the side and behind. The chest and head trauma shows frontal impact. If the truck hit him straight on, the force vectors should align. They don't. Smoke's voice went cold. So something hit him from behind first, pushed him into the truck's path. Exactly what Marcus said. The kid was right. Someone clipped Morrison from behind with enough force to send him stumbling forward into oncoming traffic. The truck driver never had a chance to stop, and whoever hit Morrison first was gone before anyone looked. What about Cruz? Leonard Cruz's report is worse. Cause of death listed as hypothermia, complicated by acute alcohol intoxication. Found at 6:15 a.m. October 26th. But Diesel already called me about this one. You want to hear what he found? Put him on conference. Click. Diesel's voice came through. Smoke. Cruz didn't die from exposure. His core body temperature was too high for someone who'd frozen to death. And the alcohol content doesn't match the timeline. He had 21 back, but his stomach contents showed he hadn't eaten in over 18 hours. That much alcohol on an empty stomach would have incapacitated him within an hour of consumption, meaning someone forced it into him, Smoke said. Or he was already unconscious when it was administered. There is bruising on his jaw and throat consistent with forced ingestion. The coroner missed it because he was looking for exposure and intoxication, not assault, but it's there in the photos if you know what to look for. Smoke was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. So, we have 2 veterans dead within 3 weeks, 1 pushed into traffic and 1 force-fed alcohol and left to die. Both deaths staged to look accidental, both in the same location. Marcus was right about everything. There's more. Reaper said, I pulled property records for the railway district. Guess who owns the land where the homeless camp is located? Tell me. Riverside Development Corporation, subsidiary of Thornton Industries. CEO is David Thornton. Age 43, Portland-based. Net worth approximately $89 million. Sits on Riverside Springs City Council. Major donor to the mayor's re-election campaign. His company has development contracts worth $47 million to convert the railway district into mixed-use commercial and residential space. And homeless camps make that difficult, impossible. The city rationing requires the area to be cleared of unauthorized occupants by December 1st. That's 5 weeks from now. Thornton's company loses the contract if they can't deliver vacant land on schedule. Smoke's jaw tightened. How many people live in that camp? Marcus said 10 to 12. Since there are now getting exact count. As if summoned. Smoke's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Sent. I'm adding you to the call, Smoke said. What have you got? Sent's voice restrained. 7 people currently living under the Highway 14 overpass. 4 are veterans. All of them knew Morrison and Cruz and Smoke. They're scared. 3 different people told me they've been approached by a man in an expensive suit offering them money to relocate, $200 cash to pack up, and leave voluntarily. Did they take it? Did. Left last week. The other 5 refused because they've been here 4 years. They know the shelters are full and $200 doesn't get you housing when you're homeless. It gets you robbed or dead. Did anyone describe the man in the suit? White male, early 40s, well-dressed, drives a black SUV, professional, polite, offered the money like he was doing them a favor. When they refused, he said he understood, but maybe they should reconsider because accidents happen in places like this. He threatened them. Implied threat, plausible deniability, smart enough not to say anything directly actionable. St. Paul's. Smoke. There is a woman here named Rachel Delgado, 51 years old, Army veteran, Desert Storm. She bunked with Morrison. She said he told her 2 days before he died that the suitman had come back and told him specifically that stubborn people who don't accept help sometimes get hurt trying to prove a point. Did she report it to who? The police. They don't care about threats against homeless people. She told me Morrison laughed it off, said he'd survived Vietnam, and some rich bastard in Italian shoes didn't scare him. Sunt's voice cracked. 3 days later, he was dead. Smoke closed his eyes. How many of the 7 people there are veterans? 4. Rachel William Patterson goes by Doc, 61. Desert Storm medic, Anthony Chen, 53. Navy, Gulf War, and Jerome Washington, 58. Army, Panama and Iraq. The other 3 are civilians, but long-term homeless. They've built community there. They look out for each other. They're targets, Diesel said flatly. All of them. Thornton needs that land clear. He's already killed 2 people. He's not going to stop. We need to move them, Reaper added. Get them somewhere safe. They won't go, St said immediately. I already suggested it. Rachel told me in very clear terms that they're not abandoning their home because some rich developer wants to build condos. She said they've been pushed around their entire lives and they're done running. Smoke understood that, respected it, but it didn't change the math. St. You still there with them? Yes, are sitting around their fire. They're feeding me stew that's better than anything I've had in a month. Stay there tonight. Hammer, Wrench, Diesel. I want you to join him. 4 of us on rotating watch. Nobody approaches at camp without us knowing. Reaper, keep digging into Thornan. Pixel, where are you on traffic cameras? Pixel's voice came through a new line. Just pulled footage from October 3rd and October 26th. Smoke, you need to see this. Send it. 30 seconds later. Smoke's phone buzzed with video files. He opened the first one. Grainy black and white footage from a traffic camera covering Highway 14, the railway underpass. Timestamp. October 3rd, 9:43 p.m. A figure walking along the shoulder. Thomas Morrison recognizable from the photos. Headlights approaching from behind. Truck from the north. And then, exactly as Marcus described, a dark SUV entering frame from the southeast access road. The SUV accelerated, clipped Morrison from behind. Not hard enough to kill him, just enough to send him stumbling forward into the truck's path. The truck's brake lights flared to late. Impact. Morrison went down. The SUV never stopped, never slowed, just drove past and disappeared north on Highway 14. License plate partially visible. 7B something Q something to Oregon plates. Black Cadillac Escalade. Jesus Christ. Smoke breathed. The kid was right about everything. He opened the second video. October 26th, 11:17 p.m. Same location, different angle. The same SUV parked on the access road for 11 minutes. A figure exited the driver's side, too far from the camera to identify clearly, but wearing what looked like business attire. The figure approached the underpass area, disappeared from frame for 8 minutes, then returned to the SUV, and drove away. At 6:15 a.m. October 26th, Leonard Cruz was found dead 50 yards from where that SUV had parked. Pixel, can you enhance the driver's image? Already working on it. Image quality is terrible, but I'm running facial recognition against David Thornton's public photos. If it's him, we'll know in an hour. And the license plate, partial match to a 2023 Cadillac Escalade registered to Riverside Development Corporation. Company vehicle. I'm pulling records of who had it signed out on both dates. Smoke felt the case solidifying. Evidence, documentation, pattern, motive, everything Marcus had insisted was real, validated by video footage and forensic analysis. We need to call the police. Hammer said. This is beyond citizens' investigation. We have evidence of 2 homicides. We need to turn it over. To who? Reaper challenged. Riverside PD already closed both cases as accidental. The coroner signed off. The detective who handled Morrison's death is 3 weeks from retirement and isn't going to reopen a closed file that makes him look incompetent. And Thornton sits on the city council. You think local police are going to move against him without ironclad proof? We have video. We have grainy footage of an SUV that could be anyone driving a company vehicle that multiple people have access to. We have coroner reports that were already officially accepted. We have a 7-year-old witness who's already been dismissed as traumatized. That's not ironclad. That's circumstantial at best. So, what do we do? Diesel asked. Smoke made the decision. We protect the camp tonight. Tomorrow we contact FBI. This is interstate fraud, development contracts, federal highway land, multiple jurisdictions. FBI won't have the same conflicts of interest as local PD, but tonight, we make sure nobody else dies. Agreed, St said. I'm staying here with Rachel and the others. We're on our way, Hammer added. Be there in 20. Smoke ended the call and sat in silence. A 7-year-old boy had documented to murders that the entire adult system had missed or ignored. Marcus had been right about all of it. And that meant Marcus was also right that there could be more victims. The pattern suggested someone systematically eliminating obstacles to a development project worth $47 million, to deaths in 3 weeks. 5 more potential targets still living in the camp. December 1st deadline 5 weeks away. The math was ugly. His phone rang again. Unknown number. Smoke answered cautiously. Mr. Garrett. A woman's voice. Professional. Tense. My name is Sarah Chen. I am a special agent with the FBI, White Collar Crimes Division, Portland Field Office. I understand you've been investigating some deaths in Riverside Springs. Smoke's instincts fired. Who told you that? I've been monitoring Riverside Development Corporation for 8 months as part of a larger investigation into development fraud. Your name came up this evening because someone accessed sealed federal documents related to Thornton Industries contracts that someone used former military credentials that trace back to your club. I'm calling to ask if you'd like to coordinate rather than interfere with each other. You're already investigating Thornton for wire fraud, interstate commerce violations, and corruption. We've been building a case since February. But if you have evidence connecting him to homicides, that changes everything. Murder moves this from white-collar prosecution to major crimes. And it gives me leverage I don't currently have. Smoke calculated quickly. What do you need? Everything you've found. Tonight, I'm sending you a secure file transfer link. Upload all documentation, videos, forensic analysis, witness statements. I'll have a team in Riverside Springs by morning. We have a 7-year-old witness who saw the first murder. He's been dismissed by local authorities. I need guarantees he'll be protected and taken seriously. You have my word. If his testimony is credible and supported by evidence, he'll be protected under federal witness protocols. But Mr. Garrett, I need you to stand down on any direct action. If Thornton suspects federal investigation, he'll destroy evidence and run. I need you to watch, document, and report. Can you do that? We have 4 men heading to the homeless camp right now. There are 7 people there who we believe are potential targets. I'm not pulling my people until those civilians are safe. Chen was quiet for 3 seconds. Understood. Keep them safe. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. If anything happens, you call me immediately. She rattled off a direct number. I'll have agents positioned by 0400 hours. But Garrett, this stays quiet. No confrontations. No vigilante justice. We do this legally or we lose him. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Agent Chen clears throat. You'll have our files within the hour. Good. And Mr. Garrett, thank you for believing that child. Most people wouldn't have. She hung up. Smoke immediately called Pixel. I'm forwarding you contact info for FBI agent Sarah Chen. Upload everything we have to our secure server. Everything. Videos, documents, forensics, Marcus notebook. Photograph every page. She's running point on federal prosecution. You trust her. I trust that she's been investigating Thornton longer than we have, and she has resources we don't. And I trust that she called us instead of shutting us down. That means she needs what we found. Uploading now. Smoke's next call was to Diane Webb. She answered on the 4th ring. Groggy. Mr. Garrett, it's almost midnight. Mrs. Webb, I need you to listen carefully. We verified Marcus' observations. Both deaths were homicides staged as accidents. We have video evidence. We're coordinating with FBI. Your son was right about everything. Silence. Then a sound like air being punched from lungs. Oh my God. Oh my God. He was telling the truth. Yes, ma'am. Which means he's a witness to 2 murders. FBI is taking over the investigation. But I need you to keep Marcus home from school tomorrow. Keep him inside. Don't let him walk to his grandmother's house. Don't let him go anywhere alone. Federal agents will want to interview him, but they'll do it properly with child psychologists present. He's in danger. Potentially, the man we suspect doesn't know Marcus exists as a witness yet, but if he finds out, he's already killed twice to protect a $47 million development contract. We're not taking chances with your son's safety. What do I tell him? Tell him we believed him. Clears throat. Tell him he did the right thing. Tell him he saved lives by being brave enough to keep telling the truth." Smoke's voice softened. "And tell him I'm proud of him. He's got more courage than most Marines I served with." Diane was crying now. "I should have believed him from the start. I should have listened. You believed him enough to bring him to us. That's what matters. Now keep him safe while we handle this." Okay. Thank you, Mr. Garrett." Smoke ended the call and headed for his motorcycle. Sant and the others needed backup, and he wasn't going to coordinate a protection operation from his living room. The ride to the railway district took 18 minutes. Cold October night, temperature dropping toward freezing, his breath visible in the headlight beam. He thought about the 7 people living under that overpass, veterans and civilians who'd built community in the Mojans society ignored. He thought about Thomas Morrison, Vietnam veteran who'd survived war and PTSD and homelessness, only to be murdered for occupying land a rich man wanted. He thought about Leonard Cruz, Gulf War veteran with a traumatic brain injury, force-fed alcohol, and left to freeze. He thought about his son, Ethan, Marine Corporal, 22 years old, who tried to tell people he was drowning, and nobody listened until it was too late. This time would be different. This time someone was listening. Smoke pulled into the access road near the underpass. From motorcycles already parked, St. Hammer, Diesel, Wrench, standing around a fire barrel with 7 homeless individuals. Rachel Delgado saw Smoke and stood extending her hand. "You're the president. St. told us about Jackson Garrett. People call me Smoke." He shook her hand. Firm grip. Direct eye contact. Soldier recognizing soldier. Rachel Delgado. "Army. First Gulf War. These people are my family. St. says you believe someone killed Thomas and Leonard. I know someone did. We have evidence. FBI is taking over the investigation. But tonight, my brothers and I are staying here to make sure nothing happens to you or anyone else. We don't need protection." "Yes, ma'am, you do. The man who killed your friends has a December deadline. He's already killed twice. He'll kill again if we give him the chance." Smoke's voice went hard. "I'm a Marine. These are my brothers. Those 2 men were veterans. That makes them our responsibility. And we failed them. We didn't know what was happening until a 7-year-old boy documented it and begged us to listen. We're not failing the rest of you." Rachel studied his face. 7-year-old Marcus Webb. He witnessed Morrison's death, saw the SUV clip him from behind, tried to tell police, teachers, his mother. Nobody believed him until he came to us this morning. Smoke pulled out his phone, showed her Marcus' notebook photographs. He documented everything. Dates, times, descriptions. He wrote down every time an adult dismissed him. He kept trying to tell the truth because he knew it mattered. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Thomas loved that kid. Marcus used to walk past on his way to his grandmother's house. Thomas would wave, tell him stories about helicopters. Marcus would bring him snacks sometimes, apple slices, crackers. Thomas said Marcus was the only person who looked at him. He was human instead of invisible. Marcus saw him get killed, and he refused to let it be forgotten. He saved your lives tonight by making us investigate. Smoke looked at the others gathered around the fire. "We're staying. You're welcome to accept our help or tell us to leave. But either way, we're not going anywhere until FBI secures this area. And the man who killed your friends is in custody." William Patterson spoke up, 61 years old. Desert Storm medic, shaking slightly from Parkinson's. "How long?" "FBI arrives at 0400 hours, 6 hours from now. We hold position until then. And after that, you testify. You tell federal agents everything you saw. Everyone who approached you, every threat that was made. You help them build a case that puts David Thornton in prison for the rest of his life." "What if we can't stay here?" Anthony Chen asked. "What if they clear the camp anyway?" Smoke looked at Saint. Saint nodded. "Then we find you housing." Smoke Clear's throat said. "Legal housing. The Iron Brotherhood has connections, resources. We help homeless veterans. It's part of what we do. But first, we make sure you're alive to be housed. Deal?" Rachel looked at the others. Silent communication. Then back to Smoke. Deal. But if this soup bastard shows up tonight, I want 5 minutes with him before you call the feds. Can't promise that, ma'am. But I can promise he won't hurt anyone here. You have my word. She accepted it. The next 5 hours were the longest of Smoke's life. Rotating watch, listening to Rachel and Doc and Anthony and Jerome tell stories about Thomas Morrison and Leonard Cruz, learning that Morrison had saved 3 men's lives in Vietnam, that Cruz had pulled 2 children from a burning building in Tacoma before his injury, that both men had families who'd stopped calling years ago, who'd given up on them, who didn't come to identify their bodies, learning that Marcus Webb, -1 years old, grieving his dead father, trying to be brave, had seen Thomas Morrison as human, when everyone else saw him as a problem to be solved. At 3:47 a.m. Headlights appeared on the access road, black Cadillac Escalade. Smoke's hand went to his phone. Everyone went silent. The SUV approached slowly, stopped 50 yards away, idling, watching. Hammer had his camera out recording. Diesel moved to position himself between the vehicle and the civilians. Wrench's hand was on his phone, ready to dial 911. The SUV sat there for 90 seconds. Then it reversed, turned around, and drove away. He knows we're here, Sant said quietly. Good, Smoke replied. Let him know. Let him see that these people aren't alone anymore. At 4:03 a.m., 3 black SUVs arrived. FBI agent Sarah Chen stepped out. 50-some Vietnamese American wearing a windbreaker that said federal agent in yellow letters. Mr. Garrett, I'm Agent Chen. We spoke on the phone. Agent, your timing's good. We had a visitor 17 minutes ago. Black Escalade, same partial plate. Marcus documented. Watched us for 90 seconds, then left. We saw him on surveillance. We've had eyes on this location since midnight. We know who was driving. Thornton, his head of security, former Portland PD hired 2 years ago. We're bringing him in for questioning at 600. Chen, the 7 people around the fire. You're the camp residents. Rachel stood. We are. Single quotes am. I'm going to need statements from all of you. Everything you've seen, everyone who approached you, every conversation. This is a federal investigation now. You have protections, you have rights, and you have my guarantee that we will prosecute everyone involved in your friends' deaths. And our camp? Doc asked. We live here. Federal investigators will secure this as a crime scene. You'll need temporary housing. We have emergency vouchers. We've got their housing. Smoke interrupted. Already arranged. They're staying at the Iron Brotherhood Clubhouse until permanent placement is secured. Unless they object. 7 sets of eyes looked at him. Rachel smiled slightly. No objection. Agent Chen nodded. That works. Mr. Garrett, I need you and your people to come to the Portland field office at 10 a.m. We'll take formal statements, review evidence, coordinate witness protection for the Webb child. We'll be there. As the FBI began processing the scene, Smoke walked Rachel and the others to the waiting motorcycles. 7 homeless veterans and 3 civilians being escorted by 8 bikers whose society taught them to fear. Rachel rode behind Smoke as they pulled onto Highway 14. She leaned forward and said into his ear, "That boy Marcus, when this is over, I want to meet him. Want to tell him thank you for remembering Thomas was a person worth fighting for." Smoke nodded because that's what this was about. A 7-year-old who'd refused to unsee what he'd witnessed, who documented truth when adults dismissed it, who'd kept telling his story until someone finally listened. And now federal agents were moving. Evidence was secured. Witnesses were protected. David Thornton's $47 million development contract was about to cost him everything. All because a child whispered, "I swear it's real." And 8 bikers decided to believe him. Marcus sat in a room that smelled like vanilla air freshener and fear. The FBI field office in Portland had windows that didn't open and chairs designed for adults that made his feet dangle 6 in off the floor. Agent Sarah Chen sat across from him with a woman she'd introduced as Dr. Rebecca Walsh, child psychologist, who had kind eyes and kept a bowl of M&Ms on the table between them. "Marcus, you're not in trouble," Dr. Walsh said for the third time. "You did everything right. We just need you to tell us exactly what you saw in your own words, so we can help the people who need help. Can you do that?" Marcus looked at his mother sitting beside him, then at Smoke standing against the wall behind Agent Chen. Smoke gave him a small nod. "I can do that," Marcus said. "I've told it before. Nobody believed me until Mr. Smoke did." "I believe you too," Agent Chen said. "And I need you to be very detailed, because what you saw is going to help us make sure bad people can't hurt anyone else. Start from the beginning. October 3rd. What time did you leave your grandmother's house?" Marcus pulled out his notebook. They'd given it back to him after photographing every page. 9:30 p.m. I checked my watch. Dad gave me this watch before he died, and I always check it because it makes me feel like he's still with me. "That's good, Marcus. Very good. What happened next?" "I walked down Porter Street to Railway Avenue. That's the fastest way home. It cuts through the district where Mr. Birdie and the others live under the overpass. I know Mom doesn't want me going through there at night, but Grandma needed her blood pressure medicine, and it was important." Diane squeezed his hand. She'd apologized 17 times since yesterday morning. Marcus had told her it was okay, but he could tell she didn't believe him yet. "When did you first see Mr. Morrison?" Agent Chen asked. "At 9:43. He was walking along the shoulder of Highway 14, heading toward the underpass. He waved at me. He always waved. I waved back. Then I heard the truck coming from the north. Really loud engine. And I stopped walking because trucks scare me at night when I'm alone." "What happened next?" Marcus closed his eyes. He could still see it. Every detail exactly like he'd written it down. The truck was maybe 100 yards away. Mr. Birdie was crossing toward the underpass. Then I heard another engine, quieter, and headlights came from the southeast access road. A black SUV. It accelerated. I remember thinking it was going too fast for that road, because there's potholes, and then it swerved. How did it swerve? Right toward Mr. Birdie. It hit him from behind. Not hard like a crash, but hard enough to make him stumble forward. He fell into the truck's path. The truck driver hit his brakes, but it was too late. The sound was terrible. Marcus's voice shook. The SUV didn't stop. It just drove past and kept going north on Highway 14. "Did you see the driver?" "No, ma'am. The windows were tinted, but I saw the license plate, part of it. 7B something Q something to Oregon plates. I wrote it down as soon as I got home." Dr. Walsh pushed the M&Ms closer. "You're doing great, Marcus. This is very brave." "I don't feel brave. I feel scared. Brave people are always scared," Smoke said from the wall. "That's what makes them brave." Agent Chen made notes on her tablet. "Marcus, 3 weeks later, you saw another death. Leonard Cruz. Tell me about that." Marcus flipped pages in his notebook. "October 25th at night. I was walking home from Grandma's again. I saw the same black SUV parked on the access road at 11:17 p.m. Recognized it from the partial plate. I hid behind a dumpster because I was afraid. A man got out wearing a suit. He walked toward the underpass, and I couldn't see him anymore. He came back 8 minutes later and drove away." "Did you see his face?" "No, ma'am. Too far away and too dark. But he walked like someone important, like he owned everything." "What do you mean?" Marcus struggled to explain. "Like how the principal walks at school. Not mean, but like they're in charge, and everyone should move for them." Agent Chen's expression shifted. The next morning, Leonard Cruz was found dead. "Yes, ma'am. The news said exposure and alcohol, but Mr. Leonard didn't drink. Rachel told me that once. He had a brain injury from the war and alcohol made it worse. So, he stopped drinking 3 years ago. So, how could he die from alcohol if he didn't drink?" "That's an excellent question," Agent Chen said quietly. "And you're right. The coroner's report was wrong. We believe someone forced alcohol into Mr. Cruz and left him to die. Marcus felt tears coming and tried to stop them. Failed. I told people. I told Officer Hendricks and Mr. Patterson and Mom and the school counselor, and nobody believed me. They all said I was confused or making it up or traumatized. Why didn't anybody believe me? Diane pulled him into a hug. Baby, I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I should have taken you seriously from the beginning. You were tired, Mom. You work all night and you were tired. And I know I cry about Dad sometimes and maybe you thought I was just sad. I understand. You're 7 years old. You shouldn't have to understand. You should have been believed. Dr. Walsh spoke gently. Marcus, adults make mistakes. We forget sometimes that children can be just as observant as adults, sometimes more so, because you notice things we've learned to ignore. You did everything right. You documented what you saw. You kept trying to tell people. You didn't give up. And because you didn't give up, you saved lives. Whose lives? Agent Chen answered. There are 7 people still living in that camp. Rachel Delgado, William Patterson, Anthony Chen, Jerome Washington, and 3 others. We believe all of them were targets. The man who killed Mr. Morrison and Mr. Cruz was going to keep killing until the camp was empty. But you exposed him before he could. Marcus thought about that. So, Mr. Birdie and Mr. Leonard died. But because of them and because I told 7 other people get to live. That's exactly right. Will you catch the bad man? Yes, Agent Chen said. I promise you we will catch him. But Marcus, I need to ask you something difficult. The man we believe did this is very rich and very powerful. He has expensive lawyers. When we arrest him, those lawyers are going to say you're just a child who misunderstood what you saw. They're going to try to make it seem like you made mistakes or got confused. Do you understand? They're going to call me a liar like everyone else did. They're going to try. But this time you have video evidence supporting your testimony. You have forensic evidence. You have adult witnesses. You have the FBI. You're not alone anymore. Marcus looked at Smoke again. Will you be there when they try to say I'm lying? Will you be there? Wouldn't miss it, Smoke said. You've got 8 bikers who believe every word you say. And we're pretty good at making sure people listen. When we think something's important, Marcus managed a small smile. You're scarred looking, but you're actually really nice. That's the secret, kid. The scariest looking people are sometimes the safest. Remember that. The interview lasted another 90 minutes. Every detail documented. Every timeline verified. Every observation cross-referenced against evidence. When it was finally over, Agent Chen walked them to the lobby. Mrs. Webb, I'm assigning protective detail to your family. 2 agents will be watching your house around the clock until we make arrests. Marcus should stay home from school for the next few days. We don't believe you're in immediate danger, but we're not taking chances. When will you arrest him? Diane asked. Soon. Clear's throat. We are coordinating with the district attorney's office. We want the charges to be ironclad. But Marcus, you should know something. Agent Chen knelt down to his level. Because of you, we're not just investigating 2 murders. We're investigating a pattern. We found evidence suggesting this has happened in other cities where Thornton Industries had development contracts. Portland 2 years ago. Seattle 3 years before that. You might have helped us connect 6 other suspicious deaths to the same man. Marcus felt dizzy. 6 more people. 6 more people who were invisible to everyone else. Homeless individuals who died in convenient locations right before development projects broke ground. Deaths that were ruled accidental or natural. But you saw through it. You refused to accept the official story. And that's going to bring justice for all of them. In the car driving home, Marcus was quiet. His mother kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. Baby, what are you thinking? I'm thinking about Mr. Birdie telling me stories about helicopters. He was funny. He did voices for all the different people he served with. He made me laugh. Marcus looked out the window and I'm thinking that he's dead. And I saw it happen and I couldn't stop it. I tried to tell people so maybe they could stop it from happening again. But they didn't listen fast enough. And Mr. Leonard died, too. That's not your fault. I know. But it still hurts. Diane pulled over, turned around in her seat. Marcus Hayes Webb, you listen to me. You are 7 years old. 7. You witnessed something horrible, and instead of hiding from it or pretending you didn't see it, you documented it. You told everyone who would listen. You kept trying even when adults dismissed you. You walked up to 8 bikers you'd never met and begged them to believe you. Do you understand how brave that was? I was scared the whole time. Brave people are always scared. That's what Mr. Smoke said. And he's right. You saved 7 lives. You exposed a killer. You showed everyone that children's voices matter. I am so proud of you. I can barely breathe. Marcus started crying again. I just wanted someone to believe me. I know, baby. And I'm sorry it took so long. But people believe you now. Important people. The FBI, federal agents, prosecutors, and 8 bikers who look terrifying, but are apparently the safest people in Oregon. She smiled through her own tears. You did it. You told the truth, and you won. 3 days later, David Thornton was arrested at his downtown Portland office. The arrest was coordinated by 12 federal agents executed with a sealed indictment charging him with 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, interstate commerce violations, and civil rights violations against protected veterans. His mugshot made national news. Expensive suit, shocked expression, handcuffs. Marcus saw it on television and felt something loosen in his chest. Relief, validation, the knowledge that speaking truth had mattered. But the legal team Thornton hired was exactly as ruthless as Agent Chen had predicted. Within 48 hours, they'd filed motions to suppress evidence, challenged the credibility of witness testimony, and begun a media campaign suggesting the FBI had been manipulated by a traumatized child's fantasies, and a motorcycle club with an agenda. Smoke called a church meeting at the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse. All members present, Rachel and the other camp residents invited, Marcus and Diane included. They're coming for the kid, Hammer said. Reading through the defense filings, they're going to argue that Marcus is an unreliable witness due to age and trauma. They're going to argue the video evidence is circumstantial. They're going to argue that Thornton had no direct involvement, that if murders occurred, it was unauthorized actions by subordinates. Can they win with that? Rachel asked. They can create reasonable doubt. That's all they need. Hammer looked at Agent Chen, who'd come to coordinate. What's the prosecution's timeline? Grand jury convenes in 3 days. We're confident we'll get an indictment. Trial likely starts in 6 to 8 weeks. And yes, Marcus will have to testify. Marcus, sitting between his mother and Smoke, spoke up. I can do it. I'll tell them what I saw. It won't be easy, Dr. Walsh said. She'd been working with Marcus 3 times a week. The defense attorney will ask you very hard questions. They'll try to confuse you. They'll try to make you doubt yourself. You'll need to stay calm and tell the truth exactly as you remember it. I have my notebook. I wrote everything down. They'll challenge the notebook. They'll say you were coached, that adults helped you write it, that you created it after the fact to support a false narrative, but that's a lie. Yes, it is, and we'll prove it's a lie. But Marcus, you need to be prepared. This is going to be difficult. Smoke put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. You're not doing this alone. We'll be there every day of the trial. Front row. And if their lawyer tries to bully a 7-year-old on the stand, they're going to have to explain to the jury why they're scared of a child who's telling the truth. I'm scared. Marcus admitted. Good. Fear makes you careful. Careful is smart. Smoke looked at Agent Chen. What else do we need to know? Thornton's team is going to investigate everyone involved. They're going to look for anything they can use to discredit witnesses. Criminal records, financial troubles, personal scandals. They're going to try to paint the Iron Brotherhood as a criminal organization interfering with legitimate business. Let them try, Diesel said. We've got nothing to hide. Actually, Pixel said quietly. They've already started. Someone's been probing our online presence, looking for dirt. They hacked into Wrench's email 2 days ago. Wrench swore. What did they find? Nothing useful to them. Invoices for the garage, pictures of motorcycles, an argument with your ex-wife from 2019. I locked them out and reported it to FBI cybercrimes. But they're desperate. Agent Chen made notes. I'll add electronic harassment to the charges. But this proves they're worried. If they weren't scared of your evidence, they wouldn't be attacking you. Rachel stood up. What about us, the camp residents? We're testifying, too, right? Yes. Your testimony establishes pattern and motive. You'll describe Thornton's threats, the offers to relocate, the timeline of deaths corresponding with development deadlines. They'll say, we're homeless drug addicts whose testimony can't be trusted. Some of you are veterans with honorable service records. Some of you have been sober 4 years. We have medical documentation. We have employment histories. And we have the fact that 2 of your friends are dead. And you're the people who knew them best. Agent Chen's voice was steel. They can try to discredit you, but I've been prosecuting white-collar criminals for 19 years. I know how to present witnesses. Trust me. Doc Patterson spoke up. He'd been quiet through most of the meeting. Parkinson's making his hands shake. What happens to us when this is over? The camp's a crime scene. We can't go back. We told you, Smoke said. Housing. We're working with the VA and local veteran services. Every veteran in this room is getting placed in permanent supportive housing. Civilian residents are getting connected with social services and housing assistance. Nobody's going back to the street. Why? Jerome Washington asked. 58 years old, Army veteran, Iraq and Panama. Why are you doing all this for people you don't know? Smoke was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. Because my son was a Marine, 22 years old. He came home from Afghanistan with PTSD. He tried to tell people he was drowning. He tried to get help. The system failed him. The VA failed him. I failed him. He killed himself 3 years ago, the garage behind my house with his service weapon. The room went completely silent. I can't save my son, but I can honor his memory by making sure no veteran dies alone, unforgotten because society decided they don't matter. Thomas Morrison mattered. Clear's throat. Leonard Cruz mattered. Every single one of you matters. And that 7-year-old boy sitting right there refused to let anyone forget it. So, we're doing this because it's right. Because it's what Marines do. Because my son would have done the same thing. Rachel's voice was thick with emotion. Ethan would be proud of you. I hope so, because I'm doing this for him and for every brother and sister who served and came home broken and got abandoned by the country they protected. Smoke looked at Marcus. And them doing it for that kid who showed more courage in 3 weeks than most adults manage in a lifetime. Marcus met his eyes. Mr. Smoke, I'm sorry about your son. Me too, buddy. But you know what? Meeting you reminded me that there are good people in this world. Young people who care about doing right, even when it's hard. That gives me hope. Agent Chen cleared her throat. We have 3 days until the grand jury. I need final statements from everyone. I need to prepare Marcus for testimony. And I need all of you to be ready for the media circus that's about to happen. Thornton's team will try to control the narrative. We need to let our evidence speak louder than their spin. The grand jury took 4 hours to indict David Thornton on all charges. The arraignment was scheduled for the following Monday. Bail was set at $5 million. Thornton posted it within 3 hours. He walked out of the courthouse in an expensive suit surrounded by lawyers and gave a statement to the cameras. I am innocent of these absurd charges. I am a respected businessman and city councilman who has spent my career improving communities and creating economic opportunities. These allegations are based on the confused testimony of a traumatized child and the vendetta of a motorcycle gang with a history of violence. I will be fully exonerated, and I will pursue legal action against everyone involved in this persecution. Marcus watched the statement on the news, saw Thornton's confident smile, saw the lawyers nodding in agreement. Saw the reporters treating it like a legitimate defense. He called me a liar again, Marcus said quietly. Diane turned off the television. He's desperate. Desperate people say desperate things. But what if the jury believes him? What if they think I'm just confused? Smoke, who'd been sitting with them, knelt down. Marcus, look at me. That man killed 2 people. He's killed more. He thought he could get away with it because he's rich and powerful. And his victims were people nobody cared about. But you cared. You saw them as human. And you documented everything so carefully that the FBI has evidence they can't ignore. He can call you confused all he wants. The video doesn't lie. The forensics don't lie. The pattern doesn't lie. What if it's not enough? Then we make it enough. We testify. We present evidence. We tell the truth. And we trust 12 people to see it. Smoke's voice dropped. But kid, I've been to war. I've seen good people die and bad people survive. I know the world isn't fair, but I also know that sometimes if you fight hard enough and refuse to give up, justice wins. You fought this hard already. Don't quit now. Marcus took a shaky breath. I won't quit. Mr. Birdie didn't raise a quitter. No, he didn't. He raised a warrior. The trial was scheduled to begin November 18th, 6 weeks away. 6 weeks of preparation, of coaching, of rehearsing testimony. 6 weeks of Thornton's legal team trying to discredit everyone involved. 6 weeks of media coverage dissecting every aspect of the case. But Marcus had his notebook. He had his testimony. He had 8 bikers who believed him and 7 homeless residents who'd lost friends. And 1 FBI agent who'd promised justice. And he had the truth. That had to be enough, because if telling the truth wasn't enough to stop powerful people from killing vulnerable ones, then nothing was. And Marcus refused to believe that nothing mattered. Mr. Birdie had mattered. Mr. Leonard had mattered. The truth mattered. And in 18 days, the world was going to hear it. The courtroom smelled like old wood and nervous sweat. Marcus sat in the witness chair with a booster cushion beneath him so the jury could see his face. Clearly his feet still didn't touch the floor. His hands gripped his notebook so hard his knuckles were white. David Thornton sat 20 feet away at the defense table, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than Diane made in 3 months. He looked at Marcus with an expression that was supposed to seem sympathetic, but felt like ice. Marcus, the prosecutor said gently. She was Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Pacheco, 46 years old, 22 years putting criminals away. Can you tell the jury what you saw on October 3rd at 9:47 p.m.? Marcus swallowed, looked at the 12 people in the jury box, 8 women, 4 men, ages ranging from 20s to 70s. Regular people who were supposed to decide if a 7-year-old was telling the truth. I saw a man get killed, Marcus said. His voice was small but clear. Mr. Thomas Morrison. Everyone called him Birdie. He was crossing Highway 14 and a railway underpass when a black SUV hit him from behind and pushed him into a truck's path. How do you know it was deliberate and not an accident? Because the SUV accelerated right before impact. I heard the engine get louder. And because it swerved toward him, it wasn't trying to avoid him. It was aiming at him. Objection. Thornton's attorney stood. Michael Hastings, 62, Harvard Law, $300 an hour, winner of 73% of his cases. The witness is speculating about the driver's intent. A 7-year-old cannot determine vehicular mechanics or driver motivation from visual observation alone. Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to the victim, gave Hastings a look that could freeze vodka. Mr. Hastings, the witness is describing what he observed overruled. Continue, Miss Pacheco. Marcus, you documented what you saw in this notebook, correct? Pocho held up the evidence bag containing Marcus' careful handwriting. Yes, ma'am. I wrote it down that same night when I got home. I knew people wouldn't believe me, so I wanted to have everything exact. Why did you think people wouldn't believe you? Because I'm 7. Adults don't listen to kids about important things. They think we make stuff up or get confused. Marcus's voice strengthened, but I wasn't confused. I saw what I saw. Pacheco walked him through the timeline. Every detail, the partial license plate, the SUV's make and model, the weather conditions, the truck driver's reaction, Morrison's body hitting the pavement, the sound it made. The jury listened. Some took notes. One woman in the back row had tears in her eyes. Then it was Hastings's turn. He stood slowly, buttoned his suit jacket, and approached Marcus with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hello, Marcus. My name is Mr. Hastings. I'm Mr. Thornton's attorney. I need to ask you some questions." Okay. Now. You say you saw this accident on October 3rd at 9:47 p.m. That's very specific. How did you know the exact time? I checked my watch. My dad gave it to me before he died, and I check it a lot. Your father passed away. I'm very sorry for your loss. When did he die? Marcus felt his chest tighten. 11 months ago. Cancer. That must have been very difficult for a 6-year-old to process. Were you close to your father? Objection, Pacheco said sharply. Relevance, Your Honor. I'm establishing the witness's emotional state and potential for trauma-based memory distortion. Judge Morrison sighed. I'll allow it, but get to the point. Mr. Hastings. Marcus, after your father died, did you have trouble sleeping? Sometimes. Did you have nightmares? Yes. Did you ever see things that weren't there? Maybe think you saw your father when he wasn't actually there. Marcus's hands tightened on his notebook. That's different. That's grief. This is what I actually saw. But how can you be sure? You were walking alone at night through a dangerous area at 9:47 p.m. Were tired. You were scared. You saw something traumatic. Isn't it possible your mind filled in details that weren't actually there? No, sir. I wrote everything down while it was fresh. I documented it with help from adults. No, sir. By myself. A 7-year-old wrote 23 pages of detailed observations with perfect timeline documentation and legal quality descriptions, all by himself on the same night he witnessed a traumatic death. Hastings's tone was skeptical. That seems remarkably sophisticated for a second grader. I'm good at writing and I knew I had to get it right or people wouldn't believe me. Marcus felt anger rising. I knew adults would say exactly what you're saying right now. That I'm making it up, or I'm confused, or I had help. So, I was extra careful to write exactly what I saw with no mistakes. You anticipated that adults would doubt you, so you created an elaborate documentation that would support your claims. Doesn't that sound like you were building a story rather than recording observations? Objection. Pacheco was on her feet. Counsel is badgering a child witness. Sustained. Mr. Hastings, rephrase or move on. Hastings smiled. Marcus, you said you saw a black SUV, but it was night time. How could you tell it was black and not dark blue or dark green? The street light. There's a light near the access road. It showed the color. And you said it was a Cadillac Escalade because your uncle drives one. But did you actually confirm the make and model, or did you just assume? I looked it up online the next day. I googled big black SUV with chrome and found pictures. It matched. So, you researched it after the fact. You didn't actually know what you were looking at when you saw it. I knew it was big and black with tinted windows and chrome trim. And it hit Mr. Birdie on purpose. Hastings paused. Marcus, you know what perjury is. Objection. Pacheco's voice was sharp. Your Honor, this is completely inappropriate. Mr. Hastings, Judge Morrison's voice could cut glass. You will not threaten a 7-year-old witness in my courtroom. One more comment like that, and I'll hold you in contempt. Are we clear? My apologies, Your Honor. But Hastings didn't look sorry. He looked at the jury to make sure they'd seen the exchange. Seen him challenge the child. Planted the seed of doubt. Marcus Hastings continued. You walk past the homeless encampment twice a week to visit your grandmother. You knew Thomas Morrison. You talked to him regularly. You brought him food sometimes. Is that correct? Yes, sir. So, you cared about him? Yes, sir. He was nice to me. And when he died, you were very upset? Yes, sir. He was my friend. Your friend. So when he died in what police determined was an accident, you didn't want to accept that. You wanted there to be a reason. Someone to blame. Isn't that possible? Marcus felt tears coming. Fought them. No. I wanted the truth. The truth is someone killed him. The truth. According to a 7-year-old who admits he was emotionally attached to the victim, who was walking alone at night in a traumatic emotional state following his father's death. who documented elaborate observations that conveniently support a murder theory rejected by police, coroner, and every adult he initially told. Hastings let that hang in the air. No further questions. Marcus looked at the jury. Half of them looked sympathetic. The other half looked uncertain, doubting. He wanted to scream. Wanted to throw his notebook at Hastings. Wanted to make them understand that everything he said was true. Every word, every detail. But Dr. Walsh had prepared him for this, had told him the defense would try to make him angry, would try to discredit him, would try to make the jury doubt. Stay calm, she'd said. Tell the truth. Let the evidence speak. Marcus stepped down from the witness chair, walked past Thornton, who was whispering something to Hastings with a satisfied smile, walked to where his mother waited in the gallery, where Smoke and 7 other bikers sat in the front row wearing their patches, where Rachel and Doc and the other camp residents filled the second row. Smoke gave him a nod. You did good, warrior. But Marcus didn't feel good. He felt like he'd failed. The prosecution called Rachel Delgado next. She walked to the stand with military bearing, 51 years old, but looking 70 from years of hard living. She was sworn in and sat down. Ms. Delgado, Pacheco said. How long did you know Thomas Morrison? Clears throat. 4 years. We bunked together under the Highway 14 overpass. He was my family. Did anyone ever approach you about relocating from the camp? Yes, ma'am. A man in an expensive suit driving a black SUV. He came 3 times over 2 months. First time, he offered us $200 each to leave voluntarily. Said the area was being developed and we should take the money and find somewhere else. Did you take the money? No, ma'am. $200 doesn't solve homelessness. It just moves it. We had community there. We looked out for each other. We weren't leaving. What happened the second time he approached you? He offered $500. Said the development was happening whether we cooperated or not. And it would be better for everyone if we left peacefully. Thomas told him we had as much right to public land as anyone. And we weren't going anywhere. And the third time, Rachel's voice hardened. He said accidents happen to people who don't know when to accept help. Said stubborn people who stay in dangerous places sometimes get hurt. Thomas laughed at him. Clears throat. Said he'd survived the Ted offensive and some suit wasn't going to scare him into abandoning his home. Did you recognize this man? Yes, ma'am. Rachel pointed at Thornton. That's him. David Thornton. I'd recognize him anywhere. Hastings stood for cross-examination. Miss Delgado. How long have you been homeless? 6 years. And in those 6 years, have you struggled with substance abuse? Rachel met his eyes steadily. I've been sober for 4 years. Army veteran. Desert Storm. Honorably discharged. Homeless because of medical bills from cancer treatment the VA didn't cover. You want to shame me for that? Go ahead. I'm not trying to shame you. I'm establishing credibility. During the time you were using substances, did you ever experience hallucinations or memory problems? Yes, which is why I got sober. And why I remember clearly every word that man said to us. You claim my client threatened you, but his exact words were that accidents happen in dangerous places. That's a statement of fact, not a threat. Homeless encampments are dangerous. People do get hurt. He was expressing concern for your safety. He was telling us we'd die if we didn't leave. We knew the difference between concern and a threat. Or you interpreted a legitimate warning as a threat because you were looking for someone to blame when tragedy struck. Hastings paused. Miss Delgado, you live under an overpass. You have no permanent address, no regular income, no stable housing. You're asking this jury to believe your testimony over a respected businessman and city councilman. Why should they? Rachel leaned forward. Because I'm an American soldier who served my country for 6 years, who put my life on the line for people like you, who came home with injuries that destroyed my ability to work, and who's been treated like garbage by a system that forgot about me. Because I watched my friends Thomas Morrison die and another friend Leonard Cruz die, and I know in my gut That man sitting right there is responsible. And because unlike rich people who lie to protect their money, I've got nothing to lose by telling the truth. That's why they should believe me. The courtroom was silent. Hastings tried to recover. Clear's throat no further questions. But the damage was done. The jury had seen a veteran defending her credibility against a lawyer trying to discredit her for being poor. Several jurors looked angry. The prosecution spent 3 days presenting evidence. Traffic camera footage showing the SUV clipping Morrison. Forensic analysis showing two separate impacts. Leonard Cruz's toxicology and forced alcohol ingestion. The company vehicle log showing Thornton had the Escalades signed out on both nights. Financial records showing the $47 million development contract. Timeline analysis showing deaths corresponding to development deadlines. And then Agent Chen dropped the bomb, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Detective Robert Vance. Portland Police Department, Cold Case Division. Vance was 57, weathered, carrying folders that looked heavy. He was sworn in. Detective Vance, Pico said. What is your current assignment? I investigate cold cases, unsolved homicides, and suspicious deaths that were previously closed. Were you asked to review certain cases in connection with this investigation? Yes, ma'am. Agent Chen asked me to look at 6 deaths in Portland and Seattle occurring between 2019 and 2023. All homeless individuals. All died in areas later developed by companies connected to Thornton Industries. Hastings shot to his feet. Objection. This is beyond the scope of the current charges. The defense was not notified of this testimony. Your Honor, Pacheco responded calmly. This testimony establishes pattern of conduct. The defense was provided discovery, including Detective Vance's findings 3 weeks ago. Judge Morrison checked her notes. The objection is overruled. Continue. Detective Vance, what did you find? 6 deaths over 4 years. All homeless. All in locations scheduled for development. All ruled accidental or natural causes. But when I reviewed them with the benefit of the Morrison and Cruz investigations, I found consistent patterns. Blunt force trauma staged as pedestrian accidents. Forced ingestion of substances staged as overdoses or exposure. And in 4 cases, witnesses reported seeing a well-dressed man in an expensive SUV near the scene within 48 hours of death. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Thornton was whispering frantically to Hastings. Detective Vance, Pacheco continued when order was restored. Were you able to connect these deaths to the defendant? In 3 cases, company vehicle logs show Thornton had a corporate SUV signed out within the time frame. In 2 cases, witnesses identified him from photo arrays. In 1 case, surveillance footage shows his vehicle parked near the scene 8 hours before the body was discovered. Are you reopening these cases as homicide investigations? Yes, ma'am, all 6. Based on pattern evidence and witness testimony, we believe David Thornton is responsible for at least 8 murders over 5 years. 8 murders. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus sat in the gallery feeling vindicated and horrified. He'd been right. But being right meant 8 people were dead. 8 invisible people whose deaths nobody questioned until a 7-year-old refused to accept the lie. The trial lasted 11 days. Testimony from camp residents, forensic experts, FBI analysts, financial investigators. The defense called character witnesses who swore Thornton was a pillar of the community, called experts who challenged the forensics, called psychiatrists who suggested Marcus suffered from trauma-induced false memories. But they couldn't explain the videos, couldn't explain the vehicle logs, couldn't explain 8 deaths following the same pattern in locations Thornton needed cleared. On day 12, closing arguments, Pacheco stood before the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense wants you to believe this case hinges on the testimony of a 7-year-old boy. They're right, it does. But not because Marcus Webb is the only evidence. It's because Marcus Webb is the only person who cared enough to look closely. The only person who saw Thomas Morrison as a human being worth fighting for. Every adult in authority dismissed him. Police, teachers, counselors, his own mother initially. But he kept telling the truth, because he knew it mattered, and because he refused to stay silent. We uncovered 8 murders, 8 human beings whose lives David Thornton decided were worth less than his profit margin. Marcus Webb saw what adults chose to ignore, and because of him, justice is possible. Hastings approached the jury looking confident. The prosecution wants you to believe a wealthy, respected businessman is secretly a serial killer who's been murdering homeless people for 5 years. Think about how absurd that sounds. My client is a city councilman, a job creator, a philanthropist. He has a wife and 3 children. He coaches Little League. Does that sound like a murderer? Or does it sound like a successful man being destroyed by circumstantial evidence and the fantasies of a traumatized child who couldn't accept that accidents happen? You've heard testimony from a 7-year-old with documented grief issues, from homeless individuals with substance abuse histories, from federal agents with an agenda, but you haven't heard one piece of direct evidence proving my client killed anyone. Not one, because it doesn't exist. This is a witch hunt, and you have the power to end it. The jury deliberated for 19 hours. Marcus didn't sleep, didn't eat, just waited. On the morning of day 13, the jury sent word they'd reached a verdict. The courtroom packed, media everywhere, Smoke and the Brotherhood in their usual front row seats, Rachel and the camp residents behind them, Agent Chen, Detective Vance, Dr. Walsh, Diane holding Marcus' hand so tight it hurt. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor, on the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Thomas Morrison. How do you find? We find the defendant guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Leonard Cruz. How do you find? We find the defendant guilty. The guilty verdicts kept coming. All charges, every single one. Thornton's face went grey. His wife sobbed in the gallery. His lawyers started filing papers for appeal before the judge finished reading. But none of that mattered, because Marcus had been right. A 7-year-old boy had seen truth that every adult missed, had documented it, had fought for it, had refused to let powerful people erase vulnerable ones, and 12 strangers had believed him. Judge Morrison scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks out, but addressed Thornton immediately. Mr. Thornton, you have been convicted of multiple counts of first-degree murder. You targeted the most vulnerable members of our society, homeless veterans who served this country, and killed them for profit. You are a disgrace to everything this community stands for. Bail is revoked. Remand the defendant into custody. Immediately. Us marshals took Thornton away in handcuffs. He looked at Marcus once as he passed. No longer confident, no longer powerful, just a man who'd underestimated a child outside the courthouse. Marcus stood with his mother and Smoke and the Brotherhood and the camp residents. Media swarmed, but Agent Chen held them back. Rachel knelt down to Marcus' level. Thomas would be proud of you. You gave him justice. You gave all of them justice. I just told the truth. That's all any of us can do. Tell the truth and hope someone listens. She pulled something from her pocket. A worn military patch. Desert Storm. Thomas Morrison's name stitched underneath. He'd want you to have this. So, you remember that speaking up for people who can't speak for themselves is the most important thing any of us ever do. Marcus took the patch with shaking hands. I won't forget. Smoke put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. You ready to go home, warrior? Yeah, I'm ready. As they walked away from the courthouse, Marcus looked back once, saw the building where justice had happened because a child refused to be silenced, saw the place where truth had won, and knew Mr. Birdie was finally at peace. 3 weeks after the verdict, David Thornton stood before Judge Patricia Morrison for sentencing. The courtroom was packed again. Marcus sat between his mother and Smoke, wearing a button-down shirt Diane had bought him special for today. Thomas Morrison's Desert Storm patch was pinned carefully to his chest. Thornton had aged visibly. Prison orange instead of expensive suits. No confident smile. No expensive lawyers whispering reassurances, just a man waiting to hear how long he'd spend in a cage for killing people society had already forgotten. Mr. Thornton, Judge Morrison said, before I pass sentence, the victims' families have the right to make impact statements. Mrs. Morrison, you may proceed. A woman stood from the gallery. Sarah Morrison, 41 years old, Army Captain Thomas Morrison's daughter. She'd flown in from Fort Bragg. Hadn't seen her father in 7 years. Hadn't known he was dead until FBI contacted her 3 weeks before the trial. Your Honor, I haven't been a good daughter. My father came home from Vietnam with demons I didn't understand. PTSD. They didn't have treatment for back then. He drank. He couldn't hold jobs. He scared me when I was little. So when I grew up, I stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped trying. I told myself he'd made his choices, and I had my own life. Her voice broke. I found out my father was murdered from an FBI agent. I didn't even know he was homeless. I didn't know he was living under an overpass 3 hours from where I'm stationed. I didn't know anything because I stopped looking. She turned to face Thornton. You killed my father because he was inconvenient, because he occupied land you wanted, because he was invisible to people like you. Well, he wasn't invisible to a 7-year-old boy who brought him apple slices and listened to his stories. Marcus Webb saw my father as human when I didn't. That child has more honor than I'll ever have. And you, Mr. Thornton, you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing you were brought down by the people you thought didn't matter. She sat down. Diane squeezed Marcus's hand. Leonard Cruz's brother spoke next. Retired police chief, 62 years old, fought tears through the whole statement. Talked about a little brother who'd served his country, who'd come home with a brain injury, who'd struggled and fallen and been abandoned by everyone who should have protected him. Then Rachel Delgado stood. Your Honor, I don't have fancy words. I'm a homeless vet who lived under a highway with people you'd walk past without seeing. But Thomas Morrison was my family. Leonard Cruz was my family. They were good men who'd seen hell in service to this country and came home to find nobody cared. This man, she pointed at Thornton, he killed them like they were trash to be cleared away. But they weren't trash. They were heroes. And I hope every single day he spends in prison, he remembers that the people he thought were worthless are the reason he's there. We mattered. They mattered. And a 7-year-old boy proved it. Judge Morrison waited until Rachel sat. Then she looked at Thornton with eyes like steel. Mr. Thornton, clear his throat. You have been convicted of 8 counts of first-degree murder. 8 human beings whose lives you deemed expendable for profit. Veterans who served this country with honor and were failed by systems meant to protect them. You exploited their vulnerability. You targeted them because you believed nobody would notice or care. You were wrong. She paused. The law provides for consecutive sentences in cases of multiple murder. I am imposing 8 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. You will die in prison, Mr. Thornton. And unlike your victims, you will do so knowing that justice was served, that a child you tried to discredit exposed you, that the people you considered invisible brought you down. Take him away. The marshals led Thornton out. He didn't look at anyone, didn't speak, just shuffled out in chains, while the gallery watched in silence. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Marcus's face was everywhere. The boy who wouldn't stay silent. 7-year-old takes down killer. Child witness exposes serial murderer. Agent Chen held a press conference. Marcus Webb exemplifies the courage and integrity we hope to see in all citizens. Despite being dismissed by multiple authority figures, he continued documenting and reporting what he witnessed. His snort's persistence led to justice for 8 victims and prevented future murders. The FBI commends his bravery and thanks the Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club for taking his concerns seriously when others failed to do so. A reporter shouted a question. Agent Chen, what happens to the homeless camp residents now? All 7 individuals have been placed in permanent supportive housing through a combination of VA services, federal victim assistance funds, and private donations. Additionally, the $89 million in assets seized from Thornton Industries will be liquidated. A portion will go to victims' families. The remainder will fund the Morrison Cruz Williams Veterans Housing Initiative, which will provide permanent housing for homeless veterans throughout Oregon. Rachel stood next to Agent Chen. We're not invisible anymore. Thanks to Marcus, the whole country knows our names. Knows Thomas and Leonard weren't just statistics. They were people, and their deaths meant something. But Marcus didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired. Felt like he'd been carrying something heavy 4 months and finally got to put it down. Felt like maybe now he could just be 7 years old again. Smoke seemed to read his mind. You want to get out of here, warrior? Yeah. Can we go somewhere quiet? I know just the place. They drove to the Highway 14 overpass. The camp was gone now, cleared as a crime scene, and then cleaned up by city workers. But someone had left flowers, lots of flowers and candles and notes. A makeshift memorial had grown over 3 weeks. Photos of Thomas Morrison in his army uniform. Photos of Leonard Cruz with his Navy buddies. Messages from strangers who'd heard the story and wanted to say the victims mattered. Marcus walked slowly through the flowers. Read the notes. Thank you for your service. You are not forgotten. Rest in peace. Heroes. He found a spot where Birdie's tent had been, sat down, pulled out the Desert Storm patch Rachel had given him. Mr. Birdie, Marcus said quietly, I hope you're okay wherever you are. I hope you know we got him. I hope you know people finally listened. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Smoke sat down beside him. You know what your dad would say if he was here? Marcus looked at him. What? He'd say you did good. He'd say standing up for what's right, even when everyone says you're wrong. That's the hardest thing any person ever does. He'd be proud of you. You didn't know my dad. No. But I know Marines. And Marines recognize courage when we see it. Your dad was Air Force, right? Yeah, cargo pilot. He flew supply missions. So, he understood service. Understood putting others first. That's what you did, Marcus. You served Thomas Morrison and Leonard Cruz by refusing to let their deaths be forgotten. Clear's throat, that's Honorable Marcus, was quiet for a long time. Then he said, What happens now? Now you get to be a kid, go to school, play with friends, do homework, be normal. The heavy Clear's throat stuff is over. Will people always know? Will I always be the kid who testified against a murderer? For a while, yeah, but memories are short. In 6 months, most people will have moved on to the next story. In a year, you'll just be Marcus again. Kid who likes dinosaurs and makes his mom crazy and does regular kid stuff. What about you? Will you move on? Smoke smiled. No, warrior, you're stuck with us now. Your Iron Brotherhood family that doesn't expire. A car pulled up. Diane and Rachel and Doc and the other camp residents got out carrying food. Agent Chen arrived with Sarah Morrison. Diesel brought his guitar. Sump brought a Bible and a flask of whiskey. We're having a memorial, Rachel explained. Right here for Thomas and Leonard, and the others. Figured you should be part of it, since you're the reason they got justice. They sat in a circle where the camp used to be. Shared stories. Rachel told about Thomas teaching her to play chess, using rocks and bottle caps as pieces. Doc talked about Leonard's terrible jokes that somehow always made people laugh. Sarah Morrison in memories of her father before the war, before the trauma, when he was just dad who pushed her on swings and read her bedtime stories. St. Read Psalm 3. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. They passed the flask around, even let Marcus have a tiny sip, which burned his throat and made him cough, which made everyone laugh. As the sun set, Diesel played guitar, old songs, country and folk, and songs veterans knew from their service days. People sang along quietly. It wasn't sad exactly. It was remembering, honoring, making sure the dead weren't forgotten. Clear's throat. Marcus sat between Smoke and his mother and thought about how strange life was. 3 months ago, he was just a kid who walked past homeless people on his way to Grandma's house. Now he was sitting with those same people, eating potato salad and listening to stories about friends who died. 3 months ago, he'd been invisible. To just another second grader nobody listened to. Now FBI agents knew his name. News channels wanted interviews. The president had sent a letter commending his civic courage. But sitting here in the dirt where Mr. Birdie used to sleep, Marcus felt like himself again. Clear's throat, not a hero, or a witness, or a symbol. Just Marcus, a kid who'd seen something wrong and tried to fix it. "Marcus," Sarah Morrison said, "can I talk to you for a minute?" They walked away from the group. Sarah knelt down to his level, military bearing making her seem both strong and sad. "I need to say thank you and I need to apologize." "You don't have to apologize to me." "Yes, I do. You're 7 years old and you did what I should have done. You saw my father as a person worth fighting for. I gave up on him years ago. Told myself he was too broken to help. But you didn't give up. You kept trying to save him even after he died. Kept trying to make sure his death meant something. You're a better person than I am, Marcus. I just told the truth. That's all any of us can do. But most of us don't. We stay silent when we should speak up. We look away when we should pay attention. We tell ourselves it's not our problem." She pulled something from her pocket. "A military medal. Bronze Star. This was my father's. He earned it in Vietnam for saving 3 men under fire. He was a hero long before you knew him. I want you to have it, so you remember that heroes come in all forms. Soldiers who save lives in war and 7-year-old boys who save lives by telling truth. Nobody wants to hear." Marcus took the medal with shaking hands. "I'll keep it safe. I know you will. And Marcus, if you ever need anything, ever, you call me. I'm going to be stationed at Fort Bragg for 2 more years. Then I'm retiring and moving back to Oregon. I'm going to work with the Veterans Housing Initiative. Going to make sure no vet ends up invisible again. It's what Dad would have wanted. And it's what I should have been doing all along." She hugged him, brief military grateful. When they returned to the group, Agent Chen was on her phone looking serious. She hung up and addressed everyone. "That was the Portland District Attorney. They just filed charges against 3 city officials and 2 police officers for negligence in failing to investigate Morrison's and Cruz's deaths. Additionally, the coroner who signed off on both reports is facing ethics violations. This case is exposing systematic failures in how we treat vulnerable populations." "Good," Rachel said fiercely. "Burn it all down and rebuild it right. That's the goal. And there's something else." Agent Chen looked at Marcus. "The Department of Justice is launching a national initiative called Marcus Law. It requires law enforcement to document and investigate all citizen reports regardless of the reporter's age, video, recording of intake processes, follow-up protocols, everything designed to prevent what happened to you from happening to other children who witness crimes." Marcus felt dizzy. "They're naming a law after me. You changed how the system works. That deserves recognition." Agent Chen smiled. "In 50 years, law students will study your case. They'll learn that justice requires listening to everyone, especially those society overlooks. You made a difference that'll last generations." Diane pulled him close. "Baby, do you understand what you did? You didn't just get justice for Mr. Birdie and Mr. Leonard. You changed the whole system. I just wanted people to believe me. And now they have to. Now, there are rules that say children's voices matter. Laws that say you can't just dismiss someone because they're young or poor or invisible." She kissed the top of his head. "You're incredible." The memorial continued until stars filled the sky. People shared more stories, more laughter, more tears. Someone mentioned that in 2 weeks they'd all be moving into the new veterans housing facility. Actual apartments, heat and running water and kitchens that worked. Thomas would lose his mind, Rachel said. He always talked about having a kitchen again someday, making his mom's lasagna recipe. Now I'll have a kitchen, and he won't be here to cook in it. So you cook it, Smoke said. Invite everyone over. Make his recipe. Keep him alive that way. Yeah, I'll do that. As people started packing up, Doc Patterson pulled Marcus aside. The Parkinson's made his hands shake, but his voice was steady. Doc kid, I don't know how to say this right, so I'm just going to say it plain. You saved my life. Literally. I was supposed to be the next one. Thornton was coming from me that night. Your bikers being there stopped it. So, thank you. Thank you for caring enough about old broken down veterans to fight for us. Marcus hugged him. You're not broken, Mr. Doc. You're a hero. All of you are. 6 months later, Marcus stood in front of Riverside Springs Elementary School with a backpack full of books, and his father's watch, his wrist, and Thomas Morrison's bronze star carefully wrapped in tissue paper in his desk drawer at home. 3rd grade. New teacher, new classroom, new kids who mostly knew his story, but were young enough not to care much. To them, he was just Marcus, the quiet kid who liked dinosaurs and was really good at writing. At lunch, he sat with a girl named Emma Chen and a boy named Tyler Washington. My mom said you testified in court against a murderer. Emma said, is that true? Yeah. Were you scared? Yeah, but you did it anyway. Yeah, someone had to. Tyler looked impressed. That's cool. My dad's a firefighter, and he says doing the right thing when you're scared is what brave means. That's what Mr. Smoke says, too. Who's Mr. Smoke? He's my friend. He's a biker. He believed me when nobody else did. Emma and Tyler absorbed this. Then Tyler said, want to play kickball at recess? Sure. And just like that, Marcus was just a kid again, playing kickball, doing homework, arguing with his mom about bedtime. Clears throat normal, except twice a month. Smoke picked him up on Saturday mornings, and they rode to the Veterans Housing Facility. Marcus helped Rachel cook in her new kitchen, played chess with Doc using an actual chess set, listened to Jerome and Anthony tell stories about their service, and once a month they all went to the memorial at Highway 14, brought flowers, told stories, made sure Thomas Morrison and Leonard Cruz and the 6 others weren't forgotten. On the 1-year anniversary of Thomas Morrison's death, October 3rd, the memorial had grown into something permanent. The city had installed a bronze plaque in memory of Thomas Morrison, Leonard Cruz, and 6 other veterans whose lives were taken, but whose deaths brought justice and reform. May we never again overlook those who served. May we always listen to those who speak truth. Marcus stood in front of the plaque with Smoke and Rachel and Sarah Morrison and 200 other people. Veterans, city officials, FBI agents, regular citizens who'd followed the story. The mayor gave a speech about community responsibility. Agent Chen talked about systematic reform. Sarah Morrison honored her father's memory, but when they asked Marcus if he wanted to say anything, he kept it simple. Mr. Birdie used to tell me stories about helicopters and jungles and the friends he made in the war. He said the hardest part wasn't the fighting. It was coming home and having nobody understand what you'd been through. He said he felt invisible most of the time, like he didn't matter anymore. Marcus's voice was stronger now. 8 years old, 4th grade starting next week. I want everyone to know he mattered. They all mattered. And if you see someone who seems invisible, someone everyone else walks past, maybe you should stop and talk to them. Maybe you should listen to their stories, because everybody matters. Even the people society forgets, especially them. The crowd applauded. Not the wild applause of celebration, the quiet applause of people understanding something important. As the ceremony ended and people dispersed, Marcus walked to the exact spot where he'd hidden behind the dumpster 1 year ago, where he'd watched a black SUV drive away after killing his friend, where he'd first understood that sometimes adults were wrong and children had to be brave. Smoke joined him. You doing okay, warrior? Yeah, I was just thinking about that night, how scared I was, how I almost didn't tell anyone because I knew they wouldn't believe me, but you told anyway. Yeah, I couldn't not tell. It wouldn't have been right. That's integrity, Marcus, doing the right thing even when it's hard, even when it costs you something. Your dad would be proud. Thomas would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. Marcus smiled. Thanks for believing me, Mr. Smoke. Thanks for not walking away. Thanks for giving me a reason to believe again. After my son died, I thought maybe the world was just broken and there was no fixing it. Then you showed me that one person telling truth can change everything. You gave me hope." They stood together in silence for a moment. Then Smoke's phone buzzed. He checked it and smiled. "Agent Chen says there's a case in Seattle. Suspicious death of a homeless woman near a development site. Local PD ruled it accidental, but some of the details are bothering them. She is asking if the Iron Brotherhood wants to consult. Are you going to?" "Yeah, we are. Because now when people like that woman die in suspicious circumstances, authorities actually look closely. They actually investigate. They actually care. That's because of you, Marcus. You changed how the system works." Marcus thought about that. About a homeless woman in Seattle he'd never meet getting justice because he'd refused to stay silent about Mr. Birdie. About laws named after him, protecting other children who witnessed things adults didn't want to see. About 7 veterans living in real apartments because he'd documented murders society wanted to ignore. "Mr. Smoke, do you think it's enough? What we did, is it enough to make up for them dying?" Smoke was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of loss and hope and hard-won wisdom. Clear as throat. "No, kid, nothing makes up for good people dying. Nothing brings them back. But making sure their deaths meant something. Making sure the world changed because of them. Making sure nobody else has to die the same way. That's all we can do. That's how we honor them. By fighting like hell to make sure it matters." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then that's what I'll do. I'll make sure it matters." "I know you will, warrior. You already have." They walked back to where Diane waited with the others. Rachel had brought lasagna made from Thomas's mom's recipe. Doc brought cards for poker. Sarah Morrison brought photos of her father in his uniform, young and strong and full of life. They sat together in the grass near the memorial, ate and talked and laughed and remembered a family built from tragedy and truth and the refusal to let invisible people stay invisible. Marcus looked around at these people who'd become his family, combat veterans and FBI agents, and his mother and bikers who society feared, but who'd saved him when everyone else failed. He thought about Mr. Birdie waving at him from the underpass, about walking up to 8 strangers and begging them not to walk away, about standing in court and telling truth that powerful people wanted silenced. He thought about how one person caring enough to document what they witnessed could expose murder, how one child refusing to stay silent could change laws, how truth spoken with conviction could bring justice even when it seemed impossible. And he understood something important. He wasn't special. He wasn't extraordinary. He was just a kid who saw something wrong and tried to fix it, who kept trying even when everyone said he was lying, who refused to accept that some people's lives didn't matter. Anyone could do that. Anyone could look closely at what everyone else ignored. Anyone could speak up when silence was easier. Anyone could be brave enough to tell truth that needed telling. Mr. Birdie had taught him that invisible people aren't actually invisible. They're just unseen. And being seen starts with one person choosing to look. Marcus Webb looked. He saw. He spoke. He changed everything. And somewhere, whatever place heroes go when they die, Thomas Birdie Morrison was finally at peace, knowing his death had not been in vain, knowing a 7-year-old boy had made sure the world remembered his name, knowing that speaking truth with courage was the most important thing any person, any age, any background could ever do. The truth had mattered. The invisible had been seen. Justice had been served. And that Marcus understood with the clarity only children possess was exactly what heroes were supposed to do.